The great hall of Station Prime floated in the darkness of space, circling a dying red star that had burned for 12 billion years. Inside this massive structure, 12 species had gathered. They came from different worlds, different histories, different forms of life. Some were made of crystal. Some had scales. Some floated in liquid tanks because they could not survive in air. But today, all shared one purpose. They had come to discuss the extinction of humanity. High Arbiter Velen stood at the center of the chamber. His body was made of living crystal, purple and black, and light passed through him like sunlight through colored glass. He had led the Galactic Hegemony Council for 300 years. In that time, he had overseen the conquest of 47 species. Some had been absorbed into the hegemony as servants. Others had been eliminated entirely. It was simply the way of the galaxy. The strong survived. The weak did not. Human problem can no longer be ignored, Velen said. His voice echoed through the hall, translated instantly into 12 languages. They have developed faster than light travel. They are expanding into space. And they are dangerous. On the massive screen behind him, images appeared. A small blue planet, covered in water and clouds. Earth, the birthplace of humanity. The screen showed their cities, their vehicles, their weapons. It showed their history wars, fought with swords, then guns, and bombs that could destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. Fleet Commander Torvax leaned forward in his seat. He was a reptilian creature, covered in gray scales, with eyes like yellow fire. He commanded the hegemony's combined military, the largest fighting force in the known galaxy. They are primitive, Torvax said. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are crude. Why do we waste time discussing them? Because they should not exist, Velen replied. Look at their world. It has suffered 5 mass extinctions. Events that killed most life on the planet. Any rational species would have died, but humans survived. Again and again, they survived. The screen changed to show human history in more detail. Ice ages that covered the planet in frozen death. Diseases that killed millions. Wars that burned entire continents. And through it all, humans kept living, kept breeding, kept fighting. They discovered nuclear weapons 70 years after learning to fly, Velen continued. Every other species that discovered such power destroyed themselves within a generation. Humans did not. They pointed those weapons at each other for decades, came within minutes of total destruction multiple times, and somehow survived. They are not rational. They do not follow the patterns of normal species, and that makes them the most dangerous thing in this galaxy. A scientist from the aquatic species spoke through her translator. Their population grows too fast. They breed like insects. In 200 years, they went from 1 billion to 8 billion. Now they spread to other worlds. If we wait, they will be too numerous to stop. Torvax pulled up military data on his personal screen. I have run the simulations. We have 40,000 warships. Humans have approximately 200. Their colonies number 12, plus their homeworld. With our full fleet, we can sterilize every human world in 6.4 standard hours. Complete extinction. Clean, efficient. High Arbiter Velen looked around the chamber. 12 species. 12 votes. Shall we proceed? One by one, they voted. The crystal beings voted yes. The reptilians voted yes. The aquatics, the insectoids, the beings of living Gasol voted yes. It was unanimous. Humanity would be erased from existence. Dispatch the armada, Velen commanded. Leave no survivors. Far across the galaxy, on a small moon orbiting Neptune, a listening station picked up something unusual. Strange energy signatures. Thousands of them. Moving fast, the young officer on duty stared at her screen for a long moment, not believing what she saw. Then she sent the emergency transmission. The message reached Earth 7 hours later. It went directly to the highest levels of government, bypassing every normal channel. Within minutes, it reached Admiral Park Do-Yen. Park Do-Yen was 62 years old. He had served in the Earth's Navy for 40 years. He had fought pirates near Mars and put down a rebellion on one of the outer colonies. He thought he had seen everything. But as he read the transmission, his hands began to shake. Thousands of alien vessels, heading for Earth, moving faster than anything humans had ever built. He contacted President Kim Yuna immediately. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had led humanity through economic crises, environmental disasters, and political upheavals. But this was something new. This was extinction. How long? She asked. 19 hours until they reach Jupiter. 23 hours until they reach Earth. President Kim was silent for a moment. Then she spoke the words that would change human history. Activate Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was humanity's darkest secret. It was a plan created 50 years ago, when humans first realized they might not be alone in the universe. A plan for the worst possible scenario. A plan for survival at any cost. Within hours, the message spread across human space. It reached every colony, every station, every ship. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language. This is not a drill. We are under extinction-level threat. All hands, all stations. Remember what we are. On Mars, factories that made farming equipment began producing weapons. On the Moon, civilians lined up to receive military training. On Earth, old nuclear missiles kept in storage for decades were brought out and prepared for launch. Admiral Park. Do-Yan stood in the command center and watched the alien fleet approaching on the long-range sensors. 40,000 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. By every calculation, by every logical measure, humanity had already lost. But Park Do-Yan was human, and humans did not believe in calculations. He opened a channel to every ship in the Earth's navy. 200. Vessels crewed by men and women who knew they were about to face impossible odds. I think they know what we are, he said. They have studied our history. They have counted our ships. They have run their simulations. But they have made a mistake. They think war is about numbers. They think survival is about logic. They do not understand that humans have never followed logic. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed us. We have looked into the darkness and refused to die. Today, we show them what that means. He paused, looking at the screen that showed the approaching enemy. Today, we show them that some things cannot be calculated. The fleet prepared for battle, and humanity waited for the storm. The hegemony armada dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter. 40,000 warships, each one a mountain of metal and weapons, spread across the darkness like a swarm of deadly insects. Fleet Commander Torvax stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the tiny human solar system with cold satisfaction. Begin scanning for enemy positions, he ordered. I want to know where every human ship is hiding.
Aye!
His officers worked their stations. Minutes passed. Then one of them looked up with confusion on his scaled face. Commander, there is nothing. Nothing. No transmissions. No ships moving. No emergency signals. The human colonies have gone completely dark. Torvax frowned. This was not normal. When the hegemony arrived to destroy a species, there was always panic. Desperate messages begging for mercy. Ships trying to flee. Populations screaming into the void. But from the humans, there was only silence. Sub-Commander Yeth stepped closer to Torvax. He was younger, more nervous. Commander, this feels wrong. Every species we have ever conquered, they all reacted the same way. Fear, desperation. But the humans send nothing. It is as if they are waiting. Waiting for what? Torvax laughed. We have 40,000 ships. They have 200. What could they possibly be waiting for? He ordered the fleet to advance toward Mars. It was humanity's largest colony, home to 30 million people. Destroying it would send a message to the rest of the species. The Armada moved through space, passing the outer planets, passing the asteroid belt. As they approached Mars, the orbital stations around the red planet suddenly came to life. But they did not broadcast surrender requests or pleas for mercy. Instead, they sent a single message. repeating over and over in the hegemony's trade language, "Should have sent more ships." "What?" Torvax stared at the message in disbelief. Then the universe exploded. Hidden in the asteroid belt, Captain Shin Ji-woo had been waiting for 3 days. Her ship, the MSV Defiance, was running on minimal power. No lights, no heat, no active sensors. 40 other human vessels floated nearby, just as silent, just as invisible. Gi-woo was 34 years old. She had joined the Navy because she loved the stars. She had never expected to fight a war, but when the orders came, she did not hesitate. None of them did. "All ships," she said into her communicator. "Execute attack pattern Omega. For Earth, for humanity." The human ships ignited their engines at full power. They burst out of the asteroid field like bullets, accelerating toward the hegemony fleet at impossible speeds. But they were not firing weapons. They were not trying to fight. They were aiming directly at the enemy ships. They were going to ram them. Captain Ji-woo felt the Defiance shake as it reached maximum speed. On her screen, she could see the hegemony cruiser growing larger every second. The alien ship tried to turn, tried to escape, but it was too slow. Human ships were smaller, faster, more agile. "Brace for impact." She shouted. The Defiance hit the hegemony cruiser at the point where its engine connected to its hull. The explosion was massive. Both ships died instantly. Across the battle space, the same scene repeated 40 times. Human ships slammed into hegemony vessels, sacrificing themselves to destroy the enemy. 18 cruisers died in the first wave, caught completely by surprise. On the hegemony flagship, Torvax watched in horror. "What are they doing? This is suicide." "Commander, Subcommander Yeth said, his voice shaking, "They are killing themselves to hurt us. No species does this. It is against all logic. It is against all survival instinct." "They are insane," Torvax whispered. "They are completely insane." But the attack was not over. On Mars, Colonel Baek Sun-ho watched the battle from deep underground. He was 50 years old, a career soldier who had spent his life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now it was here, and he was ready. "Civilian evacuation?" he asked. "Complete, sir. Everyone is in the deep bunkers." "Good. Activate the defense grid. Cross Mars orbit." Objects that had looked like civilian satellites and mining stations suddenly changed. Hidden panels opened. Weapons extended. Targeting systems locked onto the hegemony fleet. Nuclear missiles, hundreds of them, launched simultaneously. The hegemony's sensors detected them, but too late. Their point defense systems shot down many, but not all. Atomic fire bloomed across the fleet as warheads found their targets. 400 hegemony ships died in the second wave of attacks. Fleet. Commander Torvax could not believe what he was seeing. In 1 hour, he had lost over 400 vessels. The timeline for human extinction, 6.4 hours, was now meaningless. He quickly recalculated. 14 hours, he announced to his staff. "We will complete our mission in 14 hours. These are acceptable losses." But his voice did not sound certain anymore. The hegemony fleet regrouped and continued toward Mars. They had the numbers. They had the firepower. They would simply overwhelm the human defenses through sheer force. The orbital battle was brutal. Human stations fought until they were destroyed. Missile platforms emptied their weapons and then self-destructed to take enemy ships with them. When hegemony boarding parties tried to capture human vessels, they found the crews had rigged the ships to explode. Nothing was surrendered. Nothing was captured intact. The humans destroyed everything rather than let it fall into enemy hands. Finally, the hegemony gained control of Mars orbit. They pointed their weapons at the planet below. "Begin bombardment," Torvax ordered. Fire rained from the sky. Cities that had taken 50 years to build were erased in minutes. Domes cracked, and atmosphere escaped into the void. 30 million people lived on Mars. By the end of the day, most of them were dead. Torvax expected this to break the humans. He expected messages of surrender. He expected the fight to leave them. Instead, he received a transmission from Earth. It was Admiral Park Do-yeon, his face calm, his voice steady. Mars was our first colony. You have murdered 30 million of our people. We will remember every single one of them, and we will make you pay for each death 1,000 times over." The transmission ended. Subcommander Yeth looked at his commander with fear in his yellow eyes. "Sir, they watched us destroy their colony. They lost millions, and they are not surrendering. They are promising revenge." Torvax did not respond. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt doubt. The fleet moved toward Earth. But the silence from human space was no longer comforting. Now it felt like a predator waiting in the darkness. Watching, planning, ready to strike. The destruction of Mars changed something in humanity. Before, there had been fear. After, there was only cold, burning rage. 30 million dead. Entire cities turned to glass and ash. Children who would never grow up. Dreams that would never be fulfilled. The hegemony expected this loss to break human spirit. They were very, very wrong. Lieutenant Kong Mai sat in the communications center of Luna Base, surrounded by screens and equipment. She was 28 years old, a specialist in alien languages and codes. For the past week, she had been listening to hegemony transmissions, slowly cracking their encryption. Learning their secrets, what she discovered changed everything. "Admiral Park," she said through the secure channel, "I understand them now. The hegemony, I understand why they think they can beat us." Park Do-Yen's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired. He had not slept in days. "Tell me, they have never fought a real war. Not like us. When two hegemony species fight, they calculate the odds. If one side knows they will lose, they surrender. Resources are saved. Populations are absorbed. It is efficient and logical. They have conquered dozens of species this way. And us. They think we will follow the same pattern. They think once we realize we cannot win, we will give up." Mai smiled, but there was no humor in it. "They have no idea what humans are capable of when we are truly desperate." Admiral Park nodded slowly. "Then we show them. Contact all surviving commanders. We begin Operation Spectre immediately." Operation Spectre was a guerrilla war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Human ships stopped fighting directly. Instead, they became ghosts. They hid in asteroid fields and the rings of gas giants and the shadows of dead moons. They watched the hegemony fleet, learned its patterns, found its weaknesses, then they attacked where the enemy least expected. A hegemony supply convoy was traveling from Jupiter to the main fleet. It carried fuel, food, and ammunition. 20 transport ships, protected by only 4 warships. The humans had been watching it for days. When the attack came, it lasted only 7 minutes. 6 human ships appeared from nowhere, fired everything they had, and vanished before the hegemony could respond. 11 transports were destroyed. The surviving vessels sent panic signals, begging for help. By the time reinforcements arrived, there was nothing but wreckage and silence. The same thing happened again and again. Supply lines were cut. Scout ships disappeared. Hegemony officers began to fear traveling alone. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. But the physical attacks were only part of the strategy. Dr. Han Yunji worked in a secret laboratory deep beneath the Swiss Alps on Earth. She was a xenobiologist, an expert in alien life forms. For years, she had studied the few samples of alien biology that humans had collected. Now, that knowledge became a weapon. The crystal beings, the arbiters, are silicon-based life forms, she explained in her report to military command. They communicate through vibrations, but certain frequencies can disrupt their structure. It would be like an earthquake inside their bodies. Human. Engineers immediately began building sonic weapons based on her research. The reptilian species cannot regulate their own body temperature, she continued. They need external heat to survive. If we can trap them in cold environments, they become slow and weak. New tactics were developed. Human soldiers learned to vent atmosphere from captured stations, freezing the reptilian boarding parties. They learned to target arbiter commanders, with sound weapons that shattered their crystalline bodies from within. The information spread to every human resistance group across the solar system, and they used it without mercy. On a captured asteroid mining station, a group of hegemony soldiers discovered the bodies of their comrades. They had been killed in ways the hegemony had never seen, ways that exploited their biological weaknesses with terrible precision, written on the wall in alien. Blood was a message in the hegemony trade language. We are learning. Fleet Commander Torvax received reports of these incidents daily. His officers were becoming afraid. Morale was dropping. The easy victory they had expected was turning into a nightmare. They are adapting, Torvax said to High Arbiter Velen through the long-range communication channel. They study us. They find our weaknesses. They create new weapons, specifically designed to hurt each of our species. They are primitives, Velen replied. They cannot possibly match our technology. They do not need to match it. They find ways around it. Commander, I have fought many wars. I have conquered many species, but I have never faced anything like this. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like wild animals backed into a corner. There are no rules. There is no honor. There is only the desire to hurt us as much as possible before they die. The timeline extended again. The original 6.4 hours became 14 hours, then 40 hours, then 200 hours. Now, 3 weeks into the campaign, Torvax stopped giving estimates entirely. Subcommander Yeth has been one of the first to voice concerns about the human campaign. Torvax remembered this. In the hegemony, speaking against your commander was considered cowardice. Torvax had him executed in front of the crew as an example, but killing Yeth did not stop the fear from spreading. The humans captured a hegemony cruiser intact. They did not keep it. Instead, they filled it with explosives, set it on autopilot, and returned it to the fleet. When it docked with a carrier for inspection, it detonated. The explosion destroyed the carrier and damaged 3 nearby ships after that. Hegemony ships refused to accept vessels returning from combat zones. Trust was broken. Commanders suspected traps everywhere. The casualty ratio had completely inverted. For every 100 humans killed, the hegemony lost a ship. The math that had promised easy victory now promised something very different. High Arbiter Velen looked at the latest reports from his throne room on Station Prime. The greatest military force in the galaxy was bleeding. Not from a single great battle, but from 1,000 small cuts. The humans were not trying to win. They were trying to make victory so expensive that it would not be worth achieving, and it was working. What have we awakened? Velen whispered to himself. What kind of species fights like this? Across the darkness of space, the answer was written in fire and blood. Humanity was fighting back, and the galaxy would never be the same. 12 days after the war began, the hegemony armada finally reached Earth. Fleet Commander Torvax looked at the blue planet through the view screen of his flagship. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It was hard to believe that such a peaceful-looking world had produced the most terrifying species he had ever encountered. The journey from Jupiter had cost him 6,000 ships. 6,000, an unthinkable number. Ambushes, sabotage, suicide attacks, traps of every kind, the humans had used all of them. But 34,000 vessels remained, and the human navy had been reduced to scattered remnants hiding in the darkness. We have arrived, Torvax announced to his fleet. Begin bombardment positions. But before the attack could begin, a transmission came from the planet below. The screen flickered, and suddenly a human woman appeared. She was older, with gray hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple blue suit. She did not look afraid. President Kim Yuna spoke, and her words were broadcast to every ship in the hegemony fleet. You came here expecting prey, she said. You found something else. Every city you bomb will cost you 100 ships. Every soldier you land will face 1 billion enemies. We do not have a military. We are a military. Every farmer, every teacher, every child old enough to hold a weapon. She paused. and her eyes seemed to look directly at Fleet Commander Torvax. "You cannot calculate what we are willing to sacrifice, because there is no limit. Leave now, or stay, and learn why nothing in this galaxy has ever succeeded in killing us." The transmission ended. Torvax stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he gave the order. "Begin orbital bombardment. Target the largest population centers." The first city to die was Sol. 10 million people lived there. The hegemony ships fired their weapons, and a rain of destruction fell from the sky. In seconds, the city became fire. Buildings that had stood for centuries were vaporized. Families were erased so quickly they did not even have time to be afraid. Mumbai was next. Then São Paulo, then Cairo. 20 million humans died in the first hour of bombardment. Torvax waited for the surrender message. It did not come. Instead, the humans launched their counterattack. Nuclear missiles rose from hidden silos across every continent. Thousands of them aimed at the ships in orbit. The hegemony's defenses shot down most of them, but not all. Atomic fire bloomed in space as warheads found their targets. 50 ships died in minutes, but the missiles were only a distraction. Small craft civilian shuttles. Mining vessels, private ships began rising from the planet. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They had no weapons. They had no military training. They were ordinary people who had chosen to fight. Many of them had explosives on board. The hegemony shot them down by the hundreds. But there were always more, and some got through. They crashed into hegemony ships, detonating on impact. It was the same suicide tactic the military had used at Mars, but now civilians were doing it. Volunteers. People who knew they would die and did not care. Torvax watched the battle with growing horror. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do they keep fighting? They cannot win. The math is clear. Why do they not surrender?" None of his officers had an answer. On the surface of Earth, the destruction continued. More cities burned. Millions died. But the survivors did not break. They organized. They armed themselves. They prepared for the next phase of the war. Sergeant O Taiwan crouched in the ruins of Busan. The city had been beautiful once, full of life and light. Now it was rubble and ash. But people still lived here, hiding in the wreckage, waiting for their chance. Taiwan was 36 years old. Before the war, he had been a factory worker. He had a wife and 2 children. They were in a shelter somewhere, hopefully safe. He had not heard from them in days. He tried not to think about that. His resistance cell included 23 people. There was a former teacher who had become an explosives expert, a group of university students who knew how to hack hegemony communication systems, and there was Grandmother Zhang, an 8-year-old woman who had once been a competitive shooter. She was now their best sniper. "Enemy patrol approaching," one of the students whispered. 6 soldiers. 2 vehicles. Taiwan looked at his team. They had captured alien weapons, learned how to use them. They had made bombs from household materials. They were not soldiers, but they were human. "You know the plan?" he said. "Let them get close. Hit them hard. Then disappear." The hegemony patrol moved through the destroyed streets, weapons ready. They were nervous. Reports from other landing zones had been bad. Human resistance was everywhere. Soldiers were dying in ambushes. Bodies were being found with terrible wounds. The planet that was supposed to be easy to conquer had become a nightmare. The first shot came from Grandmother Zhang. Her rifle cracked once, and the alien squad leader fell. Before the others could react, explosions erupted around them, bombs hidden in the rubble, triggered by remote control. The 2 vehicles were destroyed instantly. The remaining soldiers tried to fight back, but more gunfire came from multiple directions. They could not see their attackers. They could not target them. In less than a minute, all 6 aliens were dead. Taiwan's team disappeared into the ruins before hegemony reinforcements could arrive. They had done this a dozen times already. They would do it 100 more times if necessary, across Earth. The same story repeated in every city, every town, every patch of land that the hegemony tried to control. The aliens had expected a frightened population waiting to be conquered. Instead, they found 8 billion enemies who refused to stop fighting. High Arbiter Velen received the reports in his throne room on Station Prime. The ground invasion of Earth was failing. Hegemony soldiers were dying faster than they could be replaced. Human resistance was organized, effective, and utterly merciless for the first time in the history of the galactic hegemony. A fleet commander requested reinforcements. The message from Torvax was simple and devastating. We need more ships. We need more soldiers. The humans will not surrender. They would rather die than submit. Every calculation we made was wrong. They are not a normal species. They are something else entirely. Velen stared at the message for a long time. Then he did something that had never been done before in hegemony history. He sent reinforcements. 20,000 additional ships were dispatched to Earth, half of the galaxy's remaining. Its military strength. Committed to destroying a single species on a single world, and even then, Velen was not sure it would be enough. On the burning surface of Earth, humans continued to fight. In the ruins of their cities, in the ashes of their homes, surrounded by the bodies of their loved ones, they refused to give up. They had nothing left except their will to resist. And that will was infinite. 3 months had passed since the war began. The hegemony had committed 60,000 ships to the destruction of humanity. It was half of their entire military strength gathered from across the galaxy. The greatest fighting force ever assembled in the history of known space. They had lost 22,000 of them. Earth remained unconquered. Human resistance cells operated on every occupied colony. Ghost ships appeared from the darkness to attack supply convoys, then vanished before anyone could respond. The war that was supposed to last 6 hours had become an endless nightmare. High Arbiter Velen sat in his throne room on Station Prime, reading the latest reports. The numbers were devastating. Ship losses, crew casualties, failed operations, destroyed supplies. The hegemony was bleeding from 1,000 wounds, and the bleeding would not stop. How is this possible? He asked the empty room. How can a single primitive species cause so much damage? No one answered. No one could far away in the frozen darkness beyond the orbit of Neptune. Admiral Park Do-yeon was finally ready. Everyone believed he was dead. The hegemony had announced his death after the fall of Mars. Human survivors had reported seeing his ship destroyed. But Park Do-yeon had not died. He had hidden. For 3 months he had gathered the remnants of humanity's navy. Just 47 ships all that remained of the 200 that had once defended human space. They were damaged, tired, and low on supplies. But they were not defeated. Park Do-yeon had spent those months doing something else too. Human engineers had studied every piece of hegemony technology they could capture. They had taken the enemy's shield systems, their weapons, their engines. They had not just copied them, they had improved them. The 47 ships under Park's command were no longer purely human vessels. They were hybrids combining the best of human creativity with stolen alien technology. They were faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything that had come before. Admiral Captain No Sungmin reported, "All ships are ready, weapons charged, shields at full power." Park Do-yeon looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had lost friends, family, entire worlds. They had every reason to be broken, but he saw only determination in their eyes. "Today, we remind the galaxy what humans are capable of," he said. "Today, we take back our home. All ships engage." The Battle of Saturn's rings would become legendary. 800 hegemony ships had established a blockade around the gas giant, controlling access to the inner solar system. They expected no serious resistance. Human forces were scattered and weak. Victory was only a matter of time. They did not expect 47 ships to attack them, head dash on. The human fleet emerged from behind one of Saturn's moons, using the planet's massive gravity to accelerate to incredible speeds. They dove into Saturn's rings, using the ice and rock as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. The hegemony commanders tried to respond, but human tactics made no sense to them. Human ships flew in patterns that their computers calculated as suicidal. Human pilots took risks that no rational being would take. They attacked larger ships directly, exploiting weaknesses that should have been impossible to find. Park Do-yan commanded the assault personally, his ship leading charge after charge into the enemy formation. The hegemony tried to concentrate fire on his vessel, but he was never where they expected him to be. Human pilots seemed to know what the enemy would do before they did it. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 340 hegemony ships had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost only 12. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy. The hegemony had been humiliated. 47 primitive ships had defeated 800 of their finest vessels. It was impossible. It should not have happened. But it did. On the hegemony flagship above Earth, Fleet Commander Torvax received the news. Something broke inside him. He had spent his entire career in a galaxy where war followed rules, where calculations determined outcomes, where rational beings recognized defeat and surrendered. The humans followed no rules. They could not be calculated. They refused to recognize defeat even when every number said they had lost. Torvax began laughing, then screaming, then laughing again. His officers watched in horror as their commander lost his mind. He had to be removed from command. Hi, Arbiter Velen contacted the council. The 12 species that had voted for human extinction now watched their greatest military failure unfold. Velen spoke the words that would reshape galactic politics forever. We cannot win this war. The cost is too high. For every human we kill, we lose resources we can never replace. They will not surrender. They will never surrender. If we continue, they may actually destroy us. The council voted to withdraw. It was unanimous. 1 year later, a human diplomatic vessel arrived at Station Prime. The Galactic Council waited in their great hall. But the atmosphere was very different from the meeting that had ordered human extinction. Fear hung in the air. These beings, who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, were afraid. Ambassador Humani stepped off the ship alone. She was a small woman in a simple uniform. She carried no weapons. She walked through the massive halls designed to intimidate lesser species, as if she owned them. She sat at the negotiating table and looked at the 12 species that had tried to destroy her people. Her face showed no anger, no hatred, only calm patience. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy, she said. We do not want revenge. We want only to live in to ensure that no species ever again tries to calculate our extinction. She presented the terms: full recognition of human territory, reparations for the destroyed colonies, technology sharing agreements, and a simple promise: any species that attacked humanity in the future would face the same response. Total, unending resistance. The council agreed to everything. They had no choice. As Humani prepared to leave, High Arbiter Velen stopped her. The question had haunted him for a year. How? He asked. You were outmatched in every possible way. Every calculation showed your extinction was certain. How did you survive? Ambassador Yoon turned back. For the first time, a small smile appeared on her face. You measured everything except what matters, she said. You calculated our ships, our weapons, our population. You never calculated our will. You never understood that humans do not fight because we think we can win. We fight because we refuse to lose. There is a difference. She stepped toward the door, then paused one last time. Your calculations told you we should be extinct. But here I stand, negotiating the terms of your surrender. Perhaps you should reconsider what you think you know about the universe. She left Station Prime and returned to Earth. Behind her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in silence, contemplating a simple truth. Somewhere in the cosmos, there was a species that could not be broken. A species that had looked at impossible odds and laughed. A species that had transformed certain death into impossible victory. The galaxy now knew about humanity, and the galaxy was afraid. On Earth, the reconstruction had begun. Cities were being rebuilt. Colonies were being re-established. The dead were being mourned and remembered. But there was also celebration. Against all odds, against every calculation, against an enemy that had ruled the stars for millennia, humanity had survived. Admiral Park Do-yeon stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of Seoul. Rebuilding crews worked in the distance. New buildings were rising where old ones had fallen. Life was returning. President Kim Yoon stood beside him. "You think they will leave us alone now?" she asked. Park considered the question. "For a while. They are afraid of us. But eventually, they will forget that fear. They will think they can try again. And when they do," the old admiral smiled, "then we will remind them. As many times as necessary, because that is what we are. That is what we have always been. Survivors, fighters, humans." The sun set over Earth, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It looked like fire. It looked like hope. It looked like the beginning of a new era. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as servants, not as victims, but as equals, and the galaxy would never forget what happened when it tried to destroy them.